Hi, I'm Barbara Schulte, and welcome to this 3-part free video training series on Herdwork. This is video 1 of that 3-part series. As you well know, Herdwork can feel so kind of frenzied sometimes, from not knowing what cow to cut, to the stress of being in super bad cattle, to feeling confused about what your helpers are saying. That's just to name a few of the things. At its worst, Herdwork can feel super reactive and kind of like a blur. But my intention is that after you watch all of the videos in this 3-part series, that you will have more ways to improve your Herdwork. And here's why. Because over time, for myself, as well as for when I coach other cutters, I've tried to figure out how Herdwork can be broken down. Even though it might not seem like it, Herdwork can be broken down into manageable pieces to learn and execute. Understanding just what those pieces are and then practicing them makes all the difference. When you break down Herdwork into subsets of skills, it is going to help you become more competent in the herd. So you'll have more fun and you'll set your runs up for success. And here's why. Because you're going to finally understand exactly what those tiny pieces of Herdwork really are that appear almost imperceptible when someone else is doing them. And when you don't know what the individual pieces are, it's hard to understand what's going on that allows other great cuts to evolve the way they do. But when you begin to understand those pieces, you will become more confident, because so much confidence comes from understanding. But before we start talking about the specifics of Herdwork, just for a little bit, I want to take a little diversion and talk about how many of the greatest performers in the world acquire their skills. You may already know that one of my favorite books is by a man named Daniel Coyle, The Talent Code. He talks about how students in hotbeds of talent all over the world learn in exactly the same way. Complex skills are broken down into tiny chunks. Then students practice just up to the place where he or she makes a mistake. And actually the coach is actively looking for the mistake. And then practice is stopped. A solution is given by the coach to correct the error. Then the student starts at the beginning again. And it's smooth sailing up to the error point. And hopefully the previous adjustments solve the problem. And if not, the student readjusts and starts all over again. The practice keeps happening in these chunks that stop at the error and the adjustment is made. The bar just keeps rising as errors keep advancing to more complex sequences. This system is used for each chunk. So for example, a piece of music would be practiced in a number of chunks that occurred in different parts of the composition. There would be a faster beat section, then there would be probably like a slower beat section. Then, after both the slower and the faster individual chunks are mastered, they are combined sequentially, and now, suddenly, the student can play the entire piece of music. In Herdwork, we often don't practice in chunks. First of all, because cutting involves cattle, we're working with moving targets and situations moment by moment. That's one of the things that makes cutting such a challenge to learn and to teach. Traditional thought would say to just ride down to the herd and learn by experience, and after a gazillion times later and lots of experiences, you will get better. While trips to the herd are important for improving, and I am not minimizing that, Hard work skills can be built more efficiently by breaking those skills down into small chunks and then practicing those individual pieces, just like the talent hotbeds of skill practice all over the world. And now I'd like to share with you one more really interesting piece of research that the same man, Daniel Coyle, who talked about the chunking skills, discussed about how great performers achieve excellence. Coyle also broke skills down into two categories: hard and soft skills. Hard skills are things that you do the same way every time. So like in football, for example, this would be how the quarterback throws the ball. There is a very specific technique to the mechanics of throwing a football well. Essential mechanics are the same every time. Soft skills, however, by nature, vary from moment to moment. They are more responsive to situations. So in the football example, a soft skill would be a quarterback learning to make really good decisions and throw the ball to the right person at the right time, or run the ball or hand it off. It takes experience to know what to do. What's interesting to me is that hard skills are relatively easy to learn because A plus B equals C. They take practice, but it's the same every time. Do this, do that, and you get the same result. Soft skills, however, take experience. And because soft skills involve ever-changing scenarios, they are innately more frustrating and take time and experience. So you're probably wondering about now why I took these diversions to talk about chunking component parts of complex skills and hard versus soft skills. That's because I'm about to apply these concepts to Herdwork. First, I'd like to suggest to you that there are three large component chunks of Herdwork. Let's call them phases. They are the approach to the herd, and this is the time from when you are doing your ritual to ride till you get to the edge of the herd. The second phase is the setup of your cut, and this is the time as you walk through the herd or walk alongside the edge of the body of the herd. And you are in the herd and you're setting up your situation and you're getting ready to drive to complete your cut. And then the third phase is the completion of your cut. As you drive beyond the body of the herd, you drive up, have to make decisions, move your horse, set your horse up. That's the third phase. And within each of these areas, there are subsets, we'll call it chunks of skills. And some of these chunks are hard skills and some are soft skills. For the rest of this video, I'm going to discuss some of the sub-skills of the first phase of Herdwork, your approach to the herd. As I share these chunks of approaching the herd with you, when appropriate, I'm going to comment if that particular chunk is a hard skill or a soft skill. So here is the first chunk of the approach to the herd. Have a clear plan for your cuts in general. This subset of the approach to the herd is really more about a theoretical understanding of the evolution of your Herdwork skills. It includes cutting exclusively for shape, which is what you do when you first start cutting, all the way through being vitally responsible for all of your Herdwork, as in totally knowing your cattle and collaborating actively with your help. In the final phase, you know that when you are in the herd, you hold the reins and you are truly responsible for making so many of the decisions for your cut. You know, all the while you're still utilizing your helper's input. And there are 6 steps here in this subset alone of the approach to the herd. And as you gain experience, one step naturally flows to the next. As you understand what they are, it will help you reach for the next step more easily. Now, this particular sub-skill is not a hard or a soft skill per se, but rather an understanding of the progression of your skills as you develop your herd work. The second sub-skill of your approach to the herd is to have a clear plan before you walk to the herd relevant to that group of cattle. And what I'm referring to here is figuring out your cattle plan each time you go to the herd for that specific group of cattle, in that class, on that day. It's always different for each group of cattle, but you do have a system for developing a plan. An example of this would be to say you are just learning to watch cattle. How would your cattle watching plan be different if you were early in the herd or if you drew later in the herd? What about more quiet versus wilder cattle? These are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, how your plan would change from class to class, situation to situation. The third of the sub-skills of your approach to the herd is to walk to the herd basically the same way every time. And in the past, you may or may not have thought about how you walk to the herd as needing to have some consistency to it, and even as it being a skill. However, your walk to the herd is a time of focus, and often times of communicating with your helpers. So maintaining a posture of confidence, chin up, shoulders back, eyes steadily on the herd, and having a system of reviewing your cattle plan as you walk to the herd is vital. This is a hard skill because it is important to develop a consistent way of walking to the herd. The fourth sub-skill of your approach to the herd is to determine your entry place and route before you enter the herd. It is vitally important to know where you are going to enter the herd and why, because of where you're planning to go with a purpose. For example, if you went to cut a cow near the top of the herd, you wouldn't just randomly go to the back fence if you were wanting to cut the cow at the top. But so often that happens. Cutters don't have a firm idea of where they want to go, so they just enter the herd and hope for the best. This is a hard skill. Pausing on the edge of the herd and knowing where you want to go before you go in is the same every time. The plan of where you go is not the same every time. But the skill of being disciplined to know where you're going on that particular cut, like what's your direction, what cow are you going to cut, how are you going up, that pause and that discipline is a hard skill. The fifth sub-skill of your approach to the herd is to guide your horse with little moves. There is an entire system of how to communicate with your horse accurately during your herd work. Your cues with your hands, your seat, as well as sequences of pressure applied are all part of this. One of the keys is to think about guiding your horse in little moves. Little moves allow you to stay connected. Think of it as pause, look where you're going, connect to the horse's mouth lightly, use your calf in the direction you're going to point a horse's nose in that direction, then apply more leg pressure to move laterally or forward. Guiding your horse with little moves is definitely a hard skill. It is a set of horsemanship skills that are consistent. What I just discussed are the 5 small chunks of skills that can be mastered for approaching the herd. There are many more that span from the time you enter the herd until you complete your cut. But it is my firm belief that mastering all of the different kinds of bite-sized skills needed for making beautiful cuts from the time you walk to the herd until you complete your cut will greatly reduce your frequency of making bad cuts. Those funky train wreck cuts that we all hate will never be eradicated, but they certainly can be way reduced. When you educate yourself more about all of the small things you can do to help yourself in the herd, those things add up to big results. Plus, there are some other massive benefits. You set up win-win situations. You get more consistent at making beautiful cuts. Your score improves. You begin to enjoy herd work because it makes sense to you and you understand it better. Your horse is much happier because you set things up for him. And your helpers are thrilled because you can process and execute what they're saying. So I'd like to share a vision with you. A vision of you having more fun and setting up better runs by making great cuts. In video number 2, I'm going to break down your cuts even more by sharing the small elements of setting your cut up as you are walking through the herd. These chunks will span the time from when you enter the herd until you begin to drive up to complete the cut. This is a critical time of strategizing and maneuvering. If you like the idea of breaking things down so to better understand the skills, practice them, and then ultimately master them, and you believe these ideas might help others to be better cutters and have more fun, I would love for you to spread the word about these free videos to your cutting friends. Invite them to watch this series. We have all had the not so great cuts. In fact, someone said to me recently that cutting was painful. That made me laugh. And everyone watching this video, including myself, will highly likely experience some painful cuts again. But the trick is to drastically reduce those experiences. I believe better understanding and more targeted practice on small sub-skills are keys to being more consistent in the herd. I would love for you to scroll down and leave a comment. I want to know what you think about these ideas. Your ideas are always important to me and to all of us. Just scroll down and leave a comment. I'll see you in a couple of days for the second video in this 3-part video training series. Together, we will dig deeper into the small pieces of the second phase of your cut, setting your cut up as you walk through the herd.